on the under attack report and then launch of it. And during the launch, whenever sir will give us a cue when he says that we are going to launch it, so that cover page that I've sent you on your phones on WhatsApp, maybe you can show that on your phones, and it will be like a photo opportunity. We can click a screenshot of it and keep it for documentation purpose. And then after that, there's a urgent session on way forward for India to enforce the IMS Act, followed by the question and answers.
Yes. So I have put it online now. We are online now. And in 2 minutes, I think we can start in a couple of minutes.
All right.
I think all the speakers can keep their mics off while you're not talking. We can keep our mics on a switch off mode. And I now see welcome to Amir is probably trying to join. And
57 participants have joined.
yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Amir.
Hello, Dr. Sab.
Hello. Good
Namaskar.
morning to
How are you?
and welcome. And we are going to join. We're going to begin. We are online now, and we are going to begin in a minute or so.
Hello. Yeah, you can see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Yes.
We can hear you well. Yeah.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Everything is perfect. You can hear me as well, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
मैं इनको कैसे देख
We can, Nupur, if it's time, you can start if it is time over. I think we are already 1 minute over, so you can start.
Okay, sir. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all the esteemed panel of resource persons, Dr. Vandana Prasad, Dr. K.P. Kushwaha, Mr. Amir Raza, Mr. Arjun Devot, and Dr. Arun Gupta, and my dear participants and colleagues on the occasion of World Breastfeeding Protection Day. I'm delighted to welcome you all at this milestone occasion of initiating the yearly celebration of World Breastfeeding Protection Day in India and globally. Just to give you a little bit of background, on May 21st, 1981, the World Health Assembly endorsed one of the most powerful tools to protect breastfeeding, the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitute. It recognized that commercial marketing of baby foods is harmful to the health of infants. Decades of relentless struggle of mothers, health professionals, public health experts, feminists, activists against the corporate push to powdered milk formula made it possible. BPNI advocated for the IMS Act in India and continues to monitor it till date. Breastfeeding is normal food and nourishes the babies lifelong. Protect the babies from disease and death. According to the international study, annually 100,000 child deaths could be saved in India if breastfeeding practices were adequate. In COVID-19 times, breastfeeding can protect both babies and mothers with its antibodies. But baby food companies continue to attack and replace breastfeeding with their products, blatantly breaking the Indian law to protect breastfeeding. The Infant Milk Substitute Feeding Bottles and Infant Food Regulation of Production, Supply and Distribution Act 1992 and Amendment Act 2003, um, popularly known as the Ims Act. This year, breastfeeding advocates globally have decided to celebrate 21st May of each year as the World Breastfeeding Protection Day. This day highlights that women and children need protection from the onslaught of bad marketing of baby foods. While India has a good law to provide protection to breastfeeding, it needs action for enforcement. The Breastfeeding Promotion Network of India is pleased to initiate this webinar on this occasion and launch of the report Under Attack, which is about the violations of the IMS Act in India occurred in the past 2 years. I would like to share a video from 1978, which is from the United States Senate investigation under Senator Edward Kennedy's chairmanship. It was called in 1978 to look into the marketing practices of the baby food industry, and Nestle was one of the key witnesses to. Now let's just hear what they had to say about the responsibility. Okay, just a second. Let me share my screen. I hope you all can see my screen.
Yes.
Boycott spread to 10 countries, including Britain. Here it was coordinated by the Baby Milk Action Coalition. In 1978, a United States Senate investigation under Senator Edward Kennedy's chairmanship was called to look into the marketing practices of the baby milk industry. Nestle was one of the key witnesses.
Would you agree with me that your product should not be used where there is impure water? Yes or no?
We give all the instructions.
Just answer. What is your position?
Of course not, but we cannot cope with that.
Well, as I understand what you say is where there's impure water, it should not be used.
Yes.
Where the people are so poor that they're not going to realistically be able to continue to purchase that, and which is going to mean that they're going to dilute it to a point, which is going to endanger the health, then it should not be used.
Yes.
All right, now, then my final question is what do you do, or what do you feel is your corporate responsibility to find out the extent of the use of your product in those circumstances in the developing part of the world? Do you feel that you have any responsibility?
We can't have that responsibility, sir. May I make a reference to...
You can't have that responsibility?
No.
In response to concern by member states at the decline in breastfeeding, the World Health Organization and UNICEF drafted a code of marketing aimed at restricting the unethical practices of the baby milk company. This was adopted.
Okay. Now I'm going to share the agenda for the webinar with you all. I hope you all can see my screen.
Yeah, it's quite.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. So to begin with, we are going to start with the presentation of Dr. Vandana Prasad. who's the founder, secretary, and technical advisor for Public Health Resource Network, PHRN. And she's going to talk about why protect breastfeeding from the commercial influence. After that, we have a presentation by Dr. KP Kushwaha, who's a former professor of pediatrics and principal, BRD Medical College, Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh. He's also the chief coordinator of BPNI Central Coordination Committee. Then we'll have Mr. Amir Raza, who's the Nestle whistleblower, and the film Tiger is inspired by his life story. And he's going to talk about why people should watch Tigers, the movie. After that, we have our program officer Yashika Joshi. She will screen the trailer of Tigers and a few historical videos from BPNI's protection work. And then we have Dr. Arun Gupta, the central coordinator of BPNI. He is going to launch the Under Attack report, which documents the violations of IMS Act from 2019 to 2021. After that, we would have Mr. Arjun Dewat, who's the Chief Nutrition Section, UNICEF India. He's going to talk about way forward for India to enforce the IMS Act. Followed by the question answers. I have few instructions for the participants that you can post your all your questions in the question answer section. And otherwise, if you have any other query, you can post it in the chat box. We will address it. Our team will address it. All the question and answers would be addressed in the end, not in between. And we would request everyone to follow these instructions throughout the webinar. And I welcome you all. Uh, and I would request Dr. Vandana Prasad to take her session. Before that, I would like to introduce her. Just a second, let me stop sharing my screen. Okay. All
Nupur,
right.
I think you've introduced me enough. Let's start.
Okay, you don't want me to read. I can. All right. Okay, ma'am. You can begin with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So thanks very much, BPNI friends, for inviting me to this very, very special day and very important occasion. I just want to clarify a few things before I launch into the content of what I want to say. One is that my interpretation of this subject is not really to talk of the benefits of breastfeeding, which I think are far too established for both mother and child, and for far too long to, have to reiterate at every such occasion. It's really to talk about the context of why we have to speak in terms of protection. And, the lens from which I'm looking at the need for protecting breastfeeding is clearly as a practitioner. And to this also, there are two contexts. One is decades of being a primary pediatrician. So, I have the occasion to meet with babies after they have been born in institutions, mostly in institutions, because my practice has been fairly urban, but I've been linked to rural contexts for, as long as 26 years. So I get to see what happens with babies in various types of different institutions, because institutional deliveries are practically the norm in India at this point of time. And what also happens to babies at the hands of other practitioners and, the community in general. And the second context, which I think is very critical, and that's where, the launch of today's report is located, is the context of COVID-19, because that has further kind of problematized things for us. So these are the two, contexts which I'm taking as a practitioner in general, and also as a practitioner in this particular crisis that we are facing of the pandemic. So my experience, as a practitioner has been rather unfortunate where the culpability of medical professionals is concerned. And being one myself, I feel that perhaps we are more enabled to speak about this as an insider rather than, what lay public can actually interpret of what is going on in medical practice. I find that doctors on the whole are much more likely to abandon breastfeeding than they are to take steps to promote it, especially if there's any degree of complication. I mean, in a normal delivery where everything is going well, baby will room in, and it's very likely that breastfeeding will happen. But given the slightest glitch in that situation, the slightest bottleneck that would require a little extra effort, the abandonment of breastfeeding is very, very rapid. And the reasons given by medical professionals on the whole are broadly, in my experience, three. One is the cesarean section, I mean, which we know that there are some genuine difficulties, of course, in breastfeeding during cesareans, but it's not insurmountable, is the point that really one would like to make. And we don't have clear guidelines, or at least disseminated guidelines. And we have been asking in other BPNI for this kind of thing to happen by government, of how to deal with breastfeeding in the context of cesarean section. So there may be challenges and difficulties. Sometimes it may not be possible, but on the whole, it should be. That's the point. Rather than on the whole, it being a clear reason not to allow for breastfeeding, which is the case at this point of time. The second important reason that's given is the transmission of infection to the baby just because of the proximity to the chest, which I think is very, very fallacious and very, very sad, really, to hear this kind of a reason. But this is a very common reason. And it's even much more common where it pertains to poor women who need to breastfeed even more, I would say, than a rich middle class person who can afford clean water and sterilization and proper concentrations of breast milk substitutes. So to say, the often heard statements by poor women who come to me afterwards, where their breastfeeding has been terminated by a doctor, sometimes a gynecologist, sometimes even a pediatrician, is to say that you're too weak, your breast milk is not going to be good enough for your baby, you're too dirty, you don't manage hygiene, and so on and so forth. So the demotivation of women, especially poor women, to breastfeed is so very high in favor of breast milk substitutes. Why does this happen? There are many reasons why this would happen. And direct commercial interests are only part of them, though they're very important also. But I'm not sure, what percentage of, there are not very many studies about it, how many doctors would be directly getting, kickbacks from, prescriptions of breast milk substitutes, as they often do from lab investigations and from drugs. I'm not very sure, maybe Dr. Arun Gupta would be able to say something about that. But certainly, there are many indirect commercial influences in terms of, the sponsorship of various events and programs and all the training and everything. And we face it all the time. And our institutions have not been good about managing that situation and very clearly saying no to this kind of sponsorship. So doctors have a feeling of great comfort with breast milk substitute companies, and they deal with them on a daily basis, and they feel that they're friends. The other thing is, I think the issue of doctors believing that anything that's technical is better than anything that's natural, and we see this all the time with micronutrient supplements being. I mean, I'm not against them; give them by all means. But surely we should be talking of better diets and dietary diversity. So it's the same thing. So anything where there's a product to be bought, like because that's medical and that's technological and that's technical, is favored by doctors on the whole as compared to natural processes where everybody can do it. If everybody can do it, then where do you maintain your technical superiority as a doctor? So there are those issues as well. And I think there are conflicts and competition between obstetricians and pediatricians, because when a pregnant woman goes into a hospital, she's treated as the case of the obstetrician, and the baby also kind of belongs to the obstetrician till some period of time when she's handed over. And I have actually faced these kinds of conflicts in my own hospital practice. And genuine ignorance, I put question marks, because I really can't believe that doctors could be genuinely ignorant about the benefits of breastfeeding. But let's grant it to them. Now, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think all these issues have been highly exacerbated. So others have spoken about this as well, that there are negative social, economic, corporate, and health system forces affecting the mother's decisions to breastfeed. I've just given you the reference of one paper. There are many. And so what are these? Very quickly. Social and economic, very clearly that lockdown has increased domestic responsibilities so much upon women, childcare responsibilities, work. In any case, many are working. It has increased wage work by women because the men folk have lost their jobs, lost their incomes. It has increased the informality of work and so on. I mean, I could go on ad nauseum about this. So the burden upon women has really increased during the lockdown and the pandemic. And this has definitely hampered breastfeeding as well. And a big lack of information and a surfeit of misinformation about the safety and transmissibility of COVID-19 through breast milk and so on, with very little work done by the government to kind of dispel these myths. And, there's just no conversation about breastfeeding at all. There is no conversation about breastfeeding. Only when we are training, I'm training practically every day workers on the ground, health workers on the ground, trying to dispel some of these myths and trying to reassure people that breastfeeding is a really good thing to do during the pandemic. So I think that is a real problem. Within the health systems, separation of all COVID-19 sick mothers or sick babies from each other, which is ridiculous and really needs to be moderated and rationalized. The refusal of vaccination to lactating mothers, very happy to hear that this is just, I think yesterday or day before, has just now been permitted, but months too late. So basically, we're discriminating against women who are lactating, not giving them a vaccination, putting them more at risk of COVID-19, and putting their babies more at risk from lack of care if their mothers get sick and so on. So I think this is really, it shows what kind of lack of priority we're giving breastfeeding in the country. Disruptions of community level care during pregnancy, counseling, and so on, completely disrupted antenatal care, postnatal care, and so on. And like I said, a very, very poor management of breastfeeding disruptions by the government in terms of dissemination of key messages. I'm going to leave the commercial aspects because I think that Dr. Arun Gupta and the report are going to clearly speak about them, and my time is also up. So nearly up. So we must demand clear SOPs for breastfeeding in COVID-19, and they should be very proactively put out. Don't leave it to the NGO workers and so on to talk about this in the general public. So very wide public communication and campaign, clear instructions to administrators to desist from taking free samples from BMS companies, collaboration with BMS companies, and so on. And this, I think, the consider vaccination has just happened, so very good, bit late, but very good, sooner rather than later. But we should also extend that to pregnant women, I feel. So we really need to do all this to make sure that we prevent these kinds of, babies from being seen in our rural areas and on our streets, where you see this very, 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 very malnourished looking. This was actually a 1.5-year-old. It looks like a 4-month-old, and this dirty milk bottle that is such a common sight everywhere across the country. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana, for such an insightful presentation. Now I would request the next speaker is Dr. K.P. Kushwaha. He's the former professor of pediatrics and principal of BRD Medical College, Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh, and he's also the chief coordinator of BPNI's Central Coordination Committee 2018-21. Over to you, sir. I'll share your presentation.
Okay, good noon. Hi, everybody. Namaste. Let us talk about what BPNI we have done to protect the code, international code, and in India, the act which we have enacted by the government of India. Nupur, can I have my slides?
Yes, sure, sir.
Thank you.
Just a second. Can you see my screen?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah. So you can keep instructing me to
just
forward,
go
sir.
ahead. Just go to next slide. Okay. Just you see the international code, as we all worldwide are talking. This is one of the strongest tool we have. It came after the strong fight, and that too by very powerful people like Edward Kennedy, Senator Edward Kennedy, and lot of people from IBFAN and workers throughout the globe. It's a very strong tool, no doubt about that, to ban advertisement, to ban pre-samples, gifts, and to ban company workers to contact mothers. It has labeling guides, and it says that what should be content of information materials, and in unsuitable products should not be marketed. So it regulates marketing, no doubt about that. Nipur, can we move to next slide? Next slide. IBFAN, you see, this is one organization which has worked so hard about implementation of the code also, how to implement code. It fights the violation of the code worldwide. So in 1989, it has a meeting, and in the meeting it was resolved that there must be campaigns that national level, and the international code must be made national code, and we have a national law based on the code, and we have to see that the code and laws are implemented. It was also decided to train industry not to advertise, and train health workers about the harmful effect of commercial practices, and to enable environment for mothers to breastfeed through training of health workers, through training of mothers, counseling of mothers, and through maternity entitlement. Next slide, Nupur. So IBFAN, you see, based on IBFAN meetings, India also started doing a lot of work, lot of effort to implement the code and to make a law. Before this code came, India already has a campaign for importance of breastfeeding and child survival, as globally Sicily Billions and Jelly, they were fighting against formulas, and they were seeing formula death. Dr. Santi Ghosh, we must remember this day. She is one who has done a lot of work about importance of breastfeeding and child survival. We should also remember Dr. Gopalan, Dr. Hathi, Dr. Poddar, and Dr. Taneja, because they were in 70s pediatricians in India who were talking about the breastfeeding and child survival. But the majority of effort were made by one person. That one person is Dr. Raj Anand. He started his campaign in 1979 to implement the code, to generate the awareness about the code in South Asian countries, yeah, at behest of Dr. Anwar Fazal. Dr. Anand also started working with IAP so that they don't take sponsorship from the formula companies. And in 1983, it was resolved not to take, but somehow it was not, it did not came as a resolution. And then in 1996, when BPNI has 5 years of work, and Dr. Arun Gupta was a crusader at that time, which led to IAP, GBM to resolve that they should not take any money from any company. While Dr. Anand was working for enactment of the code through NGOs like Consumer Guidance Society India, Bhai Akash, you see, he did a lot of work by organizing meetings and seminars and workshops and meetings with the policymakers, MLAs. And one MLA we must remember is Mr. Ram Naik, who is now governor of Uttar Pradesh. He was MLA at Mumbai. He was one who was instrumental in enacting the code. And MPs and ministers and minister, Mr. Arjun Singh was one who has done a lot of work in making the code as a law. And then because of a lot of lobbies, we have the national law. And when the national law was made, BPNI has already joined hand with Dr. Anand and other organizations, and it has worked for a year to make the international code as a act. Can you move to the next slide? So BPNI, though it was born on 3rd December 1991 in Wardha, Dr. Raj Anand, who has been fighting for breastfeeding, became one of the founder member and chief of training at that time. Dr. Arun Gupta, he is a person, when I will just take a minute, I become little emotional when I talk about him. So he took initial charge. It was given to him when I was born. He left his place in Jalandhar. He came to Delhi. He left his practice and he started working with, at that time, Dr. Kumta, Dr. Hathi, Dr. Arun Pathak, Dr. G.P. Mathur, Dr. Parvati Singh Gupta, Dr. Banapur, Math, and many more. And they were strong supporters. And we started BPNI with few money at that time. And BPNI started hiding inside the country, and it started work outside to implement the code in its spirit and its heart, and it also started working for implementation of the code outside India. Can you move to next slide? So we started advocacy at every level, training, and we started monitoring of the code, publication of the violations, and legal actions also. We started networking. We became the focal point for WOBA and in Asia, Southeast Asia, and for IBAPAN. And we started information generation and dissemination. We started celebrating World Breastfeeding Week since 1992. And we also started working with the governments, state governments and national government in all their actions and programs related to infant feeding. We started working with UNICEF, WHO, and other NGOs. And we also trained people and trained counselors to help mothers to breastfeed. As Dr. Bandana was saying, that mothers must be helped right from the birth, right from pregnancy, birth, and throughout the first 2 years and beyond to breastfeeding. So we started working for that. And we also started working to make hospitals BFHI. I'll be talking to the third one, the code implementation, the violations and reporting. Next, Banna. So you see, the code was enacted in 1992, but it came in practice in force in 1st August 1993. Next, Banna. Next slide, Anupama. So you see that when code became law, we started mass campaign throughout the country to train people, to let people know what is IMS Act. We have posters throughout the country. We have meetings with the shop owners. At that time, we filed a case against Nestle because of the violations of the act, because it was doing advertisement and surrogate advertisement on infant food also. And it was advertising infant foods and infant formula surrogately, and it was violating the labeling also. The court, the case is still pending, but we have won because the court has found that the Nestle has violated the act. Nupur, next slide. So BPNI was one of the body recognized by Government of India for monitoring of the act. So we are the nodal people along with the AKAS as NGOs to report the violations and to fight for violations. Next. Nupur, next slide.
Yes, sir, I have done it. Can you see it? Okay.
No, I cannot. Yeah. Okay, now it has come. So you see that when we started Nestle case and we are doing some other cases also reporting, what we found that there is television ad everywhere, even the Doordarshan was advertising. Arun Gupta has fought a lot to ban advertisement on Doordarshan and other television channels. Luckily, he has Mrs. Swaraj at that time, who was Minister of Information and Broadcasting, who was convinced through his friend, family friend, that there is a need to ban advertisement in the TV and particularly the cable TV, and this act came in practice. So we don't have any advertisement thereafter in Doordarshan and cable TV. Next number. Another case I just want to highlight because this was an eye-opener. In Meri Saheli Martutva Special in August 2000, There was a article, it was an interview of Dr. Indra Hinduja, who was a very powerful person at that time. She has given interview to breastfeed, continue breastfeeding for only 3 months. The code has 3 to 4 months, and the act has 4 month hand. But she was talking about 3 months. She was talking about scheduled feeding for every 3 to 4 hours, stopping to breastfeed at in between 6 months to 12 years, 12 months, when the babies start taking complementary food. At that time, infant food, if the mothers does not produce infant milk, she said that one should try to give her medicines and to give the babies artificial milk. So this was eye opener, because in code at that time, in the act we don't have much points to negate all these things. So we thought that there is need for amendment of the code, amendment of the act in India, and therefore he started working. We have started working from very beginning since 1994, but this gave us impetus to start wholeheartedly to amend the IMS Act so that we can include infant food in the act, and we can go to other restrictions also, which are detrimental to breastfeeding and which are against the adequate infant feeding also. Next number. BPNI is lobbying in World Health Assembly and in 11 countries outside India. They have also yielded result. In 1996, World Health Assembly resolution about banning marketing of complementary food also was through lobbying by BPNI, because it interferes with exclusive and sustained breastfeeding. Resolution 542 in 2001, where exclusive breastfeeding was adopted for 6 months. It again came with a tremendous effort through BPNI, IBFA and MWABA. And then 2002, Global Strategy for Infant and Child Feeding came. BPNI was one of the strong member in consultation group at that time also. Next slide. Next slide. Nupur, next slide.
Yes, sir. I have already done it.
Okay. No, this next to this.
Next to this? Okay. IMS Act amended and scope enlarged.
Yeah. Next.
Can you see it now? I have.
I am not seeing.
No,
Okay, let me.
We can't see. Just maybe try it again.
Okay. Just a second. Can you see it now?
Yeah, I cannot see Nupur.
No.
I think there's some problem maybe with the internet. Let me reshare it. Let me reshare it. Just a second.
Not internet, okay. Nupur, you can go to the, when you are on the presentation, there on the presentation itself, the forward, and sometimes that button works than the computer button. Yeah.
All right. Can you see it now?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
No. I don't know what's happening. I have reshared. Just a second.
Okay, let us now go ahead. You cannot see my slides. I don't know.
Or you can speak in case. Yashika, you have it?
Speak. Nupur, meanwhile,
yes,
try.
sir, yes, I have it, sir.
Sir, can you see it now?
Yeah, now I have. I can
all right.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
So this is how the 2003 amendment of IMS Act came. You see, this act was opposed at so many places in the government, in the Ministry of Women and Child Development, in the Ministry of Health, through corporate lobbying. But because of tremendous effort of Arun Gupta and then UNICEF person at that time, in UNICEF, Dr. Ali, and Mr. Naik again came here, and he was one who helped a lot in amendment. So lot of work was done for amendment also. Next. Yeah. So important points in amendment where that advertisements in electronic and in individual transmission, in audiovisual transmission was also included in banning in IMS Act, and there was a recommendation of continued breastfeeding for 2 years incorporated in definition of milk, breast milk substitutes, and along with complementary feeding after 6 months of age. And here also that it was included in definition of infant food, banning of advertisement of banning of promotion, and banning of other things, and like gifts and samples, they came to infant food also, along with other infant milk substitutes and feeding bottles. And health care workers, pharmacies, drug stores, professional organizations, they all came in purview of act, and act was made punishable. This become very strong act. Next, Nupur, next slide. Yeah. So it became a very strong act, but companies never stay at rest. They started lobbying to repeal this act, because they were saying that there is a Food Standardization Act, and another act came as FFCSI. So they said that this act must be repealed. Here again, Arun Gupta and BPNI, they worked at every level, from MPs, ministers, ministries to president, to make this act, to keep this act saved, and the repeal was rejected. Next slide.
Yes.
Effect of advocacy and training of health professionals by BPNI and MS Act. It yielded tremendous important results. Indian Academy of Pediatrics passed in 1996 its resolution to stop funding. IAP and in association with Preventive and Social Medicine endorses BPNI's counseling training course. IAP and trained nurse associations, they observe world breastfeeding each year and mobilize people. And IAP and TNAI till date collaborate with BPNI in amending the IMS Act. Next. We are bringing so many publications of violations in India, breaking the law, Nestle Violates Act, breaking the law. Next slide. And so many other things which we get from our friends about advertisement of bottles, about foods. Next, infant foods. And we are publishing marketing offenders, and it's circulated widely. This one is particularly important because we are working in 11 countries, foreign countries outside India, in Asia, and we are training, we are educating people, and we are getting information about violations, and we are publishing them. Next one. BPNI, you see, is a Delhi NGO. Can you just know? Which is working so much. Can you just hold here? Yeah. This magazine,
The Better India.
Better India, they have published an article just praising BPNI's effort in Asia for last 25 years. Next. So let me just tell you a few of the violations, and then I will stop. Nestle's International Fellowship is still going on. We have banned, we have deregistered some of the doctors through MCI, and we have asked doctors, and we have written doctors who are going on fellowship that this is a violation. So the greatest achievement is that we have deregistered some of the doctors who have gone on fellowship through MCI. Nestle, Abbott, Johnson, Wockhardt, they all sponsor doctors' sessions in conferences, sponsors meeting of doctors in India and abroad, and they are giving money, black money behind the curtain to doctors. Whenever we get chance, we go to the doctors, we just publish the reports in the reports, the violations, and we train doctors that this is violation of the act. And sometimes we take them to organizations and to MCIs. We have owned a case of Johnson Johnson because they have withdrawn their bottles. They were advertising feeding bottles. There was surrogate advertisement of Nestle Formula One, Nestle Lactogen One, because they were advertising Lactogen 2. So we have just owned that case also. In Okhars, they were advertising multivitamins and the same name Dexulac was given to Formula. We have won the case also. The free literature and books, Nestle, Dalmia, Bokards, and they are distributing. They were distributing. We are also reporting them. Many other companies, they symbolize bottle feeding to breastfeeding. In the breastfeeding rooms in the airport, they have bottle feeding pictures. We have won that case also. And Nestle supports undergraduate medical students meet or on other school children meets. So we are writing to them when we are reporting the violations then. No, put next slide. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Kushwaha. It is indeed an emotional moment for all of us today, celebrating the World Breastfeeding Protection Day. Now I will move on to the next presentation. Let me welcome Mr. Amir Raza. Syed Amir Raza Hussain, a Canadian citizen and a family member of five. The film Tigers is based on his life story to expose an injustice and corporate power and struggle to protect the health of babies and their families and stop the unethical marketing practices of baby food industry. The film was directed by an Oscar-winning director, Danish Tebnoik. The film Tigers is inspired by his real life story. Welcome, Amir. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rupert. You can hear me, everyone?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Hello to everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me. You introduced me very well, and I think I have a long relationship with BPNI for last 22 years. My first international tour in 1998, when I first time met with Dr. Arun Gupta, and oh yes, that's the picture I am looking for last night. Actually, I am out of the country right now. I am not in Canada. I am in next door to your country, and I visited India in 98, and I met a lot of sheep fanners, and I still remember the hospitality and very nice food offering me for I spent 7 days over there. Actually, I am the person that the first two speakers, they talk about Nestle, they talk about the violations, and I am doing all these violations at one point. And I am the part of these violations. And I don't know about the code at that time even. I was employee of Nestle, and I joined Nestle in 1994. I quit Nestle in 97 when I saw the death of the baby in front of my eyes. At that time, I am a father, and I am expecting my second child. And that is the reason behind I quit Nestle, I resigned, and I sent a legal notice that due to your policies, the innocent babies are dead. The violations, I am listening for last 22 years that a lot of things you are talking about in different seminars, different speakers around the world. But what is the evidence from the inside the company? I bring systematically, the chain, how we sponsor the doctors, give the gifts to the doctors, how we manage to direct contact with the mothers and babies, baby shows, everything, whatever we are doing, I give all the evidence. And that evidence is published in 99 in the name of Milking Profit. And the book Milking Profit is how Nestle put sales ahead on infant health. This is my journey start in 98 after my resignation with Nestle, and then I joined the IPFEN group. Now I am in your side, and I have 22 years with IPFEN. And thank you again, I would like to say from BPNI that I think most of the stuff like happened to me, that my first visit in India, and I met with BPNI members. The film, the part that shooting in India as well, all the characters, especially the Imran Hashmi, Adil Hussain, and all Indian famous actors, they played my family role, my father's role, my mother's role, and my role is also from India. And the film Tigers is, produced and sponsored one of the producer from India as well. And Z5 buy the rights of the the Tigers worldwide. And now around the world, where the Z5 online service is available, the people can watch, and they are already there watching. This film is start in, I think the first time in 2005. 2001, actually, I met one of the British producer who is really interested to make a film on this issue. And then in 2006, I met the Oscar winner director, Dana Stanwyck, who direct this film. The same thing, like you are talking about the problems that Nestle like manipulate with the doctors and with the government and with the, the others to how to promote their infant formula. I have the same issues. Whenever anybody listen that they would like to make a film on this issue, and on the name of the company is Nestle, we are facing a lot of problems. Even BBC film section, they refuse to do this film. On the first time part, they are agreed, but later on, they says if Nestle sue us, there is 100,000 of pounds involved in this court case, and they are not, finalize this project. Then finally, in 2012, one of the Indian producer ready to take this risk, and the film is completed in 2013. And 2014, we have a world premiere in Toronto Film Festival in Canada. And after that is a lot of film festival circuits. Japan buy the film, and they have the Japanese subtitles. In England, and the film have the rights with the Baby Milk Action, who really very work hard, especially Patty Randall and Mike Brady on this issue. They never leave any hope. They are on the last, even sometime I lose my hope that, oh, this is very difficult project, because every time we feel some, response that this film should maybe is not completed. But Baby Milk Action, they work very hard. And I don't forget, the Mike Brady and the coordinator of and Patty Randall. As far as this film is around the World Film Festival, won the best showing the digital award in India as well. Different film festivals around the world. I am, attending a lot of breastfeeding conference, and they show the film as well. Right now, I am in for the last 1.5 months in Pakistan. Where is this? I am, I born and raised, and I am just 10 kilometers away from the other side, from India, where my grandparents came from. And the thing is, here in Pakistan, I found out that any organization is working for the Breastfeeding Protection Act or anything. I am unable to find out anyone. I'm trying to do a screening in Pakistan is very difficult right now. I have nobody where I can make any connections. The same thing is happened that the first two speakers, they talk about the violations. I met a lot of medical representatives, my old colleagues. They told me that the same thing is going on. And, in this part of the world, and especially in this country, the corruption is the main factor, that when the companies are ready to pay, nobody says no. Maybe few peoples, they says no, we are not expecting any donations or any sponsorships, but mostly everybody accept these things. As far as my concern, like when I took this stand, my family supported me on first hand, and I left the country, and I am away from my family for 7 years. My parents passed, I am unable to feel, but I keep continue this fight, and until today, and until I don't know when, I keep continue this fight. Everywhere I'm going, and I give my presentation in different breastfeeding conferences, why we should see this film, because everywhere when we talk about the violations, you can see how we violate the code, how we sponsor the doctor, how we do everything in this film. This film is very well made, very famous Indian and Hollywood actors, they work on this one. The director, he worked really hard for 7 years, 8 years almost, to complete this project. In this film, you can see the first, the small, very short documentary you showed about 1978 Senate hearing. That is also in this film. We start from there. When the Nestle says, no, we have no responsibilities. And then we continue. And we showed all the Nestle's violation, how these multinational companies do. The thing is this, when I was working for Nestle, I just think that only two organizations are working for the, like in this part of the world in 1994, 97, I am thinking only two companies, two organizations who are working for the breastfeeding protection and for mother and child rights is UNICEF and WHO. But for last 22 years, is my opinion, I was so disappointed from these two organizations. Like they are talking about, they make a code in 1981, they're talking about all this stuff, but none of these two organizations arrange any screening that I am talking about for their point on this film. UNICEF, WHO, until now, they have no screening even in any forum on their, like sponsorship or anything. Whereas the IFN group is around the world, in everywhere the IFN groups are trying to screening the film, either from North America, either from India, either from Australia, in Brazil, in anywhere, like they are trying to screen the film. They would like to do something to show the violations. And my point is this, on this point, India is, I think, number 2nd in the population in the world, and Pakistan is number 5. And on this part of the world is more need to show this film to see that how that they can people really see that how the companies are manipulate with the mothers, with the doctors, and how they deal it. And we can do, like, you can encourage the people, from here, from I think when you encourage the people that, look, this is the topic we are all the time talking, and everything is in this film. And if you go to the Nestle's Switzerland's website, the head office, Nestle Switzerland, there is a reaction on this film. Oh, we are not going to sue the film, and we keep continue our policies and our all this stuff and code. And they are not interested. I mean, not now is 6 years. The first we have a screening world premiere in 2014, and now after 6 years, they are still quiet. They are not interested to sue the film. I am so pleased the outcome. First of all, for my point of view, the first to make a film on this subject, that's very, the first milestone. The second one is this project is completed and the film is outside. Even 4 years, the film is not released, or nobody have the rights to screen this film. Like now the Z5 have the rights in the worldwide to online, you can see the film. But for my concern, I think whatever I done, I am so pleased about the outcome this film. And I think most of the world, wherever I see that people like it, people know that this is happening, but how is happening, you can see in this film. If we promote this film and you can see all this stuff, and we can save more lives, we can save more contribution. And I think IPFAN group is the main and most important role they played to complete and to encourage the people to watch this film. As far as now, I am looking for more support, but due to last 1.5 years, due to COVID-19, I am unable to move to go in different seminars, but I'm trying to, encourage people, please watch this film and support and recommend the other peoples. Please see this film. As far as thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time and inviting me. I'm thankful to Dr. Arun as well. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you very much for sharing all the insights of your experience. And now I would request Yashika to please share your screen and screen the Tigers trailer. Yashika?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that your product should not be used where there is impure water?
हर साल दुनिया में करोड़ों बच्चे पैदा होते हैं.
Do you feel that you have any responsibility?
We can't have that responsibility, sir.
कुछ लाख मर भी जाएं तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
Ayan, what does your story start?
मैं आम सा आदमी, आम सी मेरी ख्वाहिश है. जिंदगी मुश्किल भी थी, पर वो कभी-कभी मुस्कुराती भी थी.
You will be selling the world's best infant formula with the world's best company, Lasta Vita.
आप अपने बच्चों के लिए बेस्ट चाहते हैं ना? तो यही है. Lasta Fooding, this stuff sells itself. ये आपके लिए.
काफी डॉक्टर्स ने पसंद भी करते हैं. अब वक्त आ गया है कि तुम अपने पर फैलाओ.
इन काले बॉक्सेस का मतलब है डॉक्टर सब ले रहे हैं.
ये सब बच्चे तुम्हारी कंपनी का दूध पीकर मर रहे हैं. हर हफ्ते, रोज बरोज.
सर, हमारे प्रोडक्ट्स की वजह से बच्चे मर रहे हैं.
गलती हमारी नहीं है आयान कि हुकूमत अपने लोगों को गंदा पानी पिलाती है.
गलती से मुझे या मेरे बच्चों को गलत का साथ देने की वजह मत बनाओ आयान.
It's not too late. The company will take you back.
I'm not coming back.
मैंने तुम्हें कभी भी अपनी नौकरी छोड़ने के लिए नहीं कहा, ना ही मैंने तुम्हें दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी फूड कंपनी के साथ पंगा लेने के लिए उकसाया आया।
This was happening in Africa in the 70s, all over Asia in the 80s and 90s, and you just sent a researcher to prove that this is still happening there now. It's an old story that's alive. It keeps repeating itself.
चलो इसी बात को मैं दूसरी तरह से कहने की कोशिश करता हूं। अगर कुछ हजार बच्चों की जान बचाने में मेरी जिंदगी पूरी तरह से तबाह हो जाए तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
Thank you, Yashika. So this movie is available on Z5. You can go and take, subscription. It's bare minimum, and you can watch it there. It's there on that OTT platform. Thank you. I just have an announcement to make that we are already running short of time, and I would request people who have presentation ahead of this now to stick to the time limit. And thank you. Now we will have next the presentation by Dr. Arun Gupta, Central Coordinator, BPNI. Dr. Arun Gupta is the Central Coordinator of BPNI. He's a pediatrician, a fellow of Indian Academy of Pediatrics, who chose to give up his lucrative private practice and founded the Breastfeeding Promotion Network of India in 1991. He focuses on policy analysis regarding support of breastfeeding women, child nutrition, and conflict of interest. He writes nationally and internationally. He's the creator of IFPAN's World Breastfeeding Trends Initiative, and he's also the convener of the Alliance Against Conflict of Interest and Nutrition Advocacy in Public Interest. Over to you, sir. Yeah. You have 15 minutes. We can see your screen. We can't hear you, sir. You're mute. You're mute. Dr. Arun, you're mute. Yashika, can you call Dr. Arun and tell him that he's mute?
Actually, I'm
Yeah,
doing
oh,
yeah.
sorry, it took time and we could see you speaking. Sorry.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Vandana and Dr. Kushwaha for having given a detailed, reasons and why we should do it. And my presentation is made easier. But today I'll share with you about why this day. We already have talked, but I'll very quickly run through and then talk about the violations of this particular report for the last 2 years, which we have compiled, which is just a tip of the iceberg, which is not that this is the only thing which is happening. These are the few things which we get reported by the concerned volunteers all over the India. But it's not a part of a systematic research that probably that would reveal maybe 100 times more what we are doing to share with you today. And in the end, I'll share with you what the government can do and what we can do as individuals. So first of all, I just want to place on record this National Health and Family Survey number 5. It shows that only 1 in 2 moms are able to begin breastfeeding within 1 hour from the data of 22 states, which is available. So this is something worrying, The 90% mothers are delivering in the hospital, but they are not able to breastfeed half of them. And I will not get into the details of the benefits. Vandana rightly put it, that this is the day we talk about protection. This is the reason that protection was granted in such a way that when I started my lessons in the early 80s, I got a lesson that if you have some money to put into breastfeeding, put into protection. So that's why these benefits are important, because you are protecting breastfeeding by protecting it from the commercial influence. In effect, you are reducing child deaths, obesity, cancers, and whatnot. Now that reminds me of a 1939 quote from when Dr. Cecily Williams, she was a West Indian, from West Indies, pediatrician serving people in difficult times in Singapore at that time. And when she was asked to speak at a Rotary meeting, and she termed this whole onslaught as murder. So I'll quickly quote from quote, if you are legal purists, you may wish me to change the title of the address to milk and manslaughter. But if your lives were embittered as mine is by seeing day after day this massacre of innocents by unsuitable feeding, then I believe you would feel, as I do, that misguided propaganda on infant feeding should be punished as the most criminal form of sedition, and that these deaths should be regarded as murder. Now, this quote keeps on sounding me because the misguided propaganda continues. And then after 40 years of the struggle of the civil society to get something on board, it took 40 years after that speech that all over the world there were people who were asking for help. Then finally, 1981, the law, this code was passed as a historic tool. And then following that, we got a law in 92, which was amended in 2003. And here I like to mention that participants can go to the BPNI website on the World Breastfeeding Protection Day page. You have all the resources, the presentations and the report, everything you can find there. Now, today about the report. So this is a report of the baby food industry and feeding bottle manufacturers brazenly flouting India's law all over the country. So we call it Under Attack because that's been a series we have been doing in the 90s also. And every 2 years we used to bring a report. This time we thought we revived that effort this time. Now I'll share some of the examples of violation included in this report. You will get the link also in the chat box soon, where you can download the report fully for your benefit. Now, advertisement is banned. Here is an advertisement by Nestle by a leaflet of this, what you call the supermart, and they are selling it on a discount. Both are prohibited under the law. Then you have these feeding bottles, Medela, you have Philip Aventis, you have the Enfamil soft nipple bottles. All these are bottle companies. They are selling the stuff on Amazon mostly. Amazon we checked, and they are still selling on discount even this year. This is prohibited. Now these are the violations which are worth noting, and action needs to be taken. And then we also found that selling on discount is a violation. And this is a Ferex, which is an infant food from Danone Nutricia, is also being sold. Just a few days back, we found this on the e-marketing site. Now, this is a new way of getting the internet savvy people getting hooked to these. And these bloggers, they call video bloggers, are hired probably by the companies. They make videos that, okay, which one to choose from. So they show different, like Nestle's Nan, Similac, or Nan Pro. So these are the two examples which we checked this year also. There's Vani Blogs and Momcam India. There are many more, actually. I'm sure there are many more. If you start looking in different states with different languages, you will see a lot. Everywhere the breastfeeding is under attack. The point is that all this requires, as Vandana very rightly put it, government needs to take serious action, not only in communicating that breastfeeding is good and breastfeeding is okay during COVID times, and cesarean mothers should be helped to breastfeed rather than getting onto this way. But the propaganda, the misguided propaganda, is moving very, very fast on the other side. Last year, we noticed this free distribution of food by Amul, by Nestle, by joining hands with police and army people. So they're all, free distribution is banned under the law, but here is a official distribution going on, through Nestle during the COVID times. Then here is a company hired so-called doctor who is spreading misinformation through the Ask the Experts. So on YouTube, the Danone set up this and they're trying to keep the babies away from mothers with that information. Then we have promotion to health professionals, which is also a violation under the law. I have shown few examples. There are many, I'm sure. This is a company called Neolacta sponsoring a neonatology conference. This is another sponsorship of Apollo Nutrition in Hyderabad by the Nestle sponsorship. This is a sponsorship by Abbott of the Central Indian Academy of Pediatric Conference, which was put on hold after we objected, but still the result is not yet out that what is the decision of IAP, because they have given it to a committee to examine. While we very well know this Abbott is listed as a sponsor and makes baby food in the country, is by definition a manufacturer and is not allowed to sponsor any conference of health workers. Health worker is defined very clearly in the law. Any person who takes care of mothers or children is a health worker in the country. So another, we have a Journal of Neonatology, which is promoting, advertising the Neolacta as human milk fortifiers, which is a violation. Then several webinars in last year, we found they were supported by, led by Abbott on the top, and other companies also joined hands. Lastly, we also examined, our team examined the labels of several companies like Amul having this teddy bear, and their violations on the Dexolac, Nan Pro, and the Similac. So we found these examples are missing what is required under the law. So that's again a violation which probably the government can take note of and ask for some action. So in the report, we make these 5 recommendations for governments and healthcare organizations. The first one we make is the government, FSSAI has already appointed food safety officers, but we insist that government appoints civil surgeons, the district health authorities as the authorized officers, so that things can be reported and shared and acted upon in the district itself, which is a unit which is not small enough, but at the same time, it is an important unit. Second, we ask the government to launch an investigation and prosecution wherever it is found to be violating the law through its letter and spirit. So that's the official work which the government should put on job through its own resources. We have written to the health minister also just yesterday about this. We request that people start reporting, and the government can make use of this app, BPNI's app called Stanpan Suraksha, available on Apple and Google Play stores. Anybody can report possible violation, the example which I have shown you. Those who want to share this app with others, please do and report. All these collections of violations have been done through emails or through the Stanpan Suraksha app. Then the fourth recommendation is to the government to put some funding for an annual report for national as well as every state, so that something can be kept alive. Last one, to health professional organizations and healthcare workers anywhere in the country, we request them to stop accepting any aid from the baby food industries or their allies. So what you can do as individuals, I will not get into the details. These 7 key features of IMS Act, that advertisements and promotion of baby foods and feeding bottles is banned. Gifts and incentives on sales of baby food is banned. Direct contact with pregnant women, promotion in the hospital, sponsorship, funding of a seminar, taking of the commission on sales, all. If you notice any of these anywhere, please monitor these companies regularly. These are the four major companies in India: Nestle, Mead Johnson, Danone, and Abbott. So you can certainly report these through Google, as I already shared with you. And I want to emphasize on this. The current focus of the companies is either internet or healthcare workers. So I would urge all the health workers, please stop, refuse, not only stop, but refuse any sponsorship to keep your ethics as well as your integrity alive. You could also tell the chemist in your neighborhood that special display of these foods is banned, so they don't know, so they can certainly. The government also has a duty to reach out to. When I say civil surgeon should be appointed, the government should actually try and do the communication campaign for this, along with during the COVID times. I agree that with Dr. Vandana that we need a concerted campaign on every day basis that mothers can, there are 5 crore mothers breastfeeding at any given time in India. So they should be reached out through a strong daily communication that they can continue breastfeeding during COVID. And the civil surgeon should be asked to monitor this law. I request you all every year on 21st May, join this campaign. And now we launch the report.
Yeah, I would request all the panelists to, if they've received this cover of the report, they can show it on their phones. And we can take a screenshot of this. Yeah, I would request everyone, if you have it on your phone, you could show this.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we're waiting. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Arun, for sharing the violations that we have covered in Under Attack. And next, moving on with the agenda, we have Mr. Arjun Watt, Chief Nutrition, UNICEF India, for sharing the way forward in India for Ims Act. Arjun Watt joined UNICEF he joined UNICEF India as Chief Nutrition in March 2017, a national of the Netherlands. Arjun has over 25 years of working experience and has been with UNICEF for 20 years now. He holds a master's degree in nutrition from Wageningen University in the Netherlands. Arjun has worked in the area of nutrition across sub-Saharan Africa in countries like Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Namibia, and Nigeria, as well as UNICEF New York headquarters. Prior to coming to India, Arjun worked as the chief nutrition in UNICEF Nigeria, where he led UNICEF nutrition response to the humanitarian crisis in northeast Nigeria due to the Boko Haram insurgents. Besides his work on nutrition, Arjun has experience of working on strengthening health systems through performance-based financing and community insurance schemes and programming on children and HIV. In UNICEF headquarters, he was the UNICEF Global Coordinator on Orphans and Vulnerable Children, and before that, the regional focal point on prevention and treatment of HIV in young children in the UNICEF Regional Office for East Asia and the Pacific in Thailand. Over to you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, wow, wow. I say wow because I've got some big gurus here who have been here and we have had the whole story about what has happened in the last 30, 40, 50 years in the country in India on breastfeeding promotion, protection. And I'm very privileged as a visitor. I feel very privileged as a visitor to India, to people, actually some of the people I've worked with for the last 20 years almost, from a distance, but now in India to be part of the team here. As was mentioned before, today it's 40 years ago that the International Code on Marketing Breast Milk Substitutes was adopted. And, you know, for me, in my response, I would almost summarize it as imagine. Yeah, and Arun, thanks, you've just given quite a list of probably what you call the tip of the iceberg of violations. But just imagine that 40 years ago, and then later in India, the code was not adopted. We probably would need not a 1.5 hour webinar. We might have needed a 1.5 week webinar. And I honestly, I trust that. And it's always difficult to say what would have happened if we hadn't done A, B, C, and D. I mean, we don't know. Well, we know it a little bit. You see differences between countries that have a strong code and not a strong code, and you see differences there. But even there, you see that companies, in particular the global companies, they are aware of the global codes. And even in countries where there's no legislation, there is some adjustment, but not enough, as you very much highlighted, Arun. I just want to emphasize it because this is about the warriors, the breastfeeding warriors, breastfeeding advocates, the people who have never given up, and several of them have spoken today. So again, imagine if that hadn't happened, if the code was not there, and if the leaders, the breastfeeding warriors hadn't been there, if BPNI had not been there. Imagine that was the case. We wouldn't have had a thin report, too thick report, but it could have been much, much, much worse. But it also shows that we shouldn't let our guard down. And I think that's very much what the report is about as well. Behind me, you see some pictures from UNICEF WHO, where of course this evening there's a webinar, a global webinar as well. There's a press release that also states the code remains as relevant today as it was 40 years ago. Last year, some marketers exploited the COVID pandemic to promote their products by invoking unfounded fear around that breastfeeding could transmit COVID. And WHO UNICEF guidance is very clear. Mothers should know that they should continue breastfeeding also in the context of COVID. That means also if they have COVID or if the baby has COVID. Again, when I read the report, I must admit there was some good news as well, because the report also highlights some of the responses. Yeah, and imagine those responses were not there. Imagine that Ministry of Health had not written the companies. Imagine that some of the professional organizations had not responded at all. So in that way, from the glass is half full. There was some good news to build on. For me, glass half full, for me always means that we know what works. Let's build on that one to make the glass full. So imagine on some of the actions, and I want to highlight five additional actions, building a little bit on what Arun said to re-emphasize. But also we need to get these actions as concrete, as small and impactful as possible. First of all, Ministry of Health, thanks so much for the work and the follow-up that you've done with regards to the violations that were brought to your attention, where you did act. And let's continue doing that. And how are we bringing this kind of level of response also to the decentralized level? Now that brings me also then to the second one. We need to have this institutionalization of the monitoring and institutionalization of response and enforcement, not only at the national level, but also at the decentralized level, at least at the state level. So that will be really the second one. And let's discuss that with the stakeholders involved, with the Ministry of Health, at the different levels on how that can be done. I'm also wondering because we had, I always believe in the goods of people as well, including the private sector sometimes. And I'm just wondering, hey, could we still go back to the private sector? And can we have that commitment, a recommitment of them to abide by the law? I can imagine that Amazon, India hadn't realized what they were doing. Yeah, so can we have a recommitment? Can we follow up also with the private sector and a recommitment from them to stick to the law, to stick to the Indian code? Same time, I also believing and trusting all these millions of health workers, frontline workers. And I want to trust that in many of the cases where things went wrong, they didn't realize. So this continuous, what can we do in the curriculum that is there? but also in the reorientation of frontline workers and health workers on awareness of the code. It's not as simple. I mean, I've been working and engaged with the code for the last 20 plus years. And even me, I always have to go back to the books. Is this a violation? Is it not violation? Is this famous gray area that companies are trying to use? So we need to keep on communicating that. And maybe there's something we can do with the Ministry of Health, of recommunicating, resharing with the frontline workers, not only Ministry of Health, also WCD and other line ministries, resharing, reorientation, and embedding in training programs, formal and informal, pre-service, in-service, around the code. Also, again, the follow-up with the professional organizations, pediatrics organizations, medical organizations. Let's sit down together again with them. And we have to do it every year, probably. It's not something you do it once, it will be solved forever. And it's sad enough, we need to continue doing that every year or every few years to reflect what more can they do or what better they can do. And then last but not least, emergencies. Yeah, and Arun, you already mentioned the COVID, other people have mentioned COVID. I'm mentioning the cyclone. We saw it also last year in the migrants response because of COVID. Yeah, and of course, COVID has got many sub-emergencies. It's the oxygen crisis now. It was the migrant crisis last year. There's so many sub-components how COVID affects the country and people. But we also have got cyclones. We know that in the goodwill of individuals, organizations, donations of breast milk substitutes are given. And we're not doing well. And I'm looking at we, including UNICEF, we're not doing well. It is not that the moment a cyclone hits or when we have a second wave, that immediately we intensify awareness around the code for the general population and for all those good wishers and for the frontline workers. We're not quick enough. Yeah, in the second wave, we were not quick enough on doing that. And even where we were quick, not impactful. And BP and I, congratulations, you've been really working hard on that the last few weeks. And yeah, but then again, collectively, as all the stakeholders, are we having the impact? So for me, there are 5 components. Again, work with the Ministry of Health to follow up on the violations, decentralization of monitoring, follow-up and enforcement. Let's go back also to those companies that have made the mistakes. Let's call them mistakes for now, yeah? And let's keep communicating with them. The fourth one was around the professional organizations. We need to keep on repeating, keep on meeting, and not just the advocates. It is very much also the Ministry of Health needs to be part of that one. And the 5th one, let's meet to reflect on what more can we do in times of emergencies, urgencies, crises, from cyclones, and a continued impact of COVID in the coming years. That well-wishers, good people who have got great intentions, don't violate the codes and don't make that mistakes just because they didn't know or maybe they did know. But so thank you very, very much. And thanks for having me here, for being part of that. And let's imagine there will not be a code in India. Things will continue going wrong. And let's imagine that we don't have the advocates, the leaders around the promotion and protection of breastfeeding in India. It will continue being needed for many more years to come. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Arun. Just to add on to the impact of, which I failed to mention, that India is selling about 27,000 tons of baby milks and China is selling 560,000 tons. So that's about 20 times higher. If we did not have this law and we were not monitoring, probably we would be selling about 300,000 to 400,000 tons of baby milks. So thank you very much. Nupur, over to you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now we will move on to the question answer round, and after that we'll have a vote of thanks. We have around 14 questions. There were some general queries which were addressed by the panelist. Okay, so to begin with, Just a second. This cursor is behaving little. Okay, so we have a question from Mr. Avinash. Dr. Avinash Bansal. Okay, I'll take first from Julie Smith. This cursor is... So Julie is asking, what did BPNI see as a problem and risk to bring IMS under Food Safety Act? Dr. Arun, if you can address this.
Yeah, actually, the problem was not that it cannot come under Food Safety Act. The Food Safety Act actually proposed that this law should be repealed, and they were trying to modify all the sections of this law to be included in the Food Safety Act, which we opposed because this Food Safety Act did not deal with the marketing.
All right. Okay, so the next question is by Mr. Avinash Bansal. He's asking, what is the data on breastfeeding in poor and uneducated mothers vis-a-vis educated and upper socioeconomic mothers? What is the data on doctors promoting breast milk substitutes?
For me?
Yeah, if you can, or Dr. Kushwaha can address it maybe. He's asking about what is the data on breastfeeding in poor and uneducated mother vis-a-vis educated and upper socioeconomic mothers, and data on doctors promoting breast milk substitute in India.
Arun, are you replying?
Okay.
I will just take the second part about doctors. Okay.
Okay. So the data on the breastfeeding in poor and uneducated, I think the NFHS 4 has all the data, which is classified into rural as well as urban, which also, you know, in detailed reporting will also get into the, you know, whether people in different income groups, what are the kind. Most of the analysis which over the past years has revealed we are not doing, but a very marginal difference between urban and the rural people. So that's a serious matter, no doubt, that this we have been watching since 92 when the first NFHS was there. And Kushwaha?
Yeah, you see, NFHS data is very clear that everywhere the breastfeeding rate, particularly the early initiation and exclusive breastfeeding rate, they are very poor, whether it's educated or uneducated mother. About prescription of doctors, you see, there has been an article in Archives of Child Health in 2006, which clearly shows that most of the prescriptions and most of the advice out of prescription about formula comes from the doctors. And there are few mothers who go for formula themselves. So more than 50% of the formulas, they are either intentionally or unintentionally prescribed by doctors or advised by doctors whenever the mother says that they have no milk supply or बच्चे का पेट नहीं भरता है or they have बच्चा बढ़ नहीं रहा है, though doctors don't know how to assess the amount of breast milk baby is getting. So without going to bother and interview mothers in detail and observe a breastfeeding, doctors have prescribed formula. So this was published in Archives of Child Health, which is still available. One can go and see that how the doctors prescribe. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Vandana ma'am, would you like to say something? You've raised your hand.
Yes, I would, because I think that at the end there's also a degree of challenge as to whether, you know, doctors actually do this kind of thing. So the one point as a researcher is that it's very difficult to gather data on this subject. Doctors are very careful not to write things. Much of this instruction is verbal. So gathering data for any malpractice of any kind is always very difficult. But if you do qualitative work with communities and you speak to enough mothers, as you know, I said, I've been 26 years practicing as a primary pediatrician. I've spoken to enough numbers of mothers. I think that you get this evidence very immediately. So I mean, I don't think any doctor sitting here would doubt it really. There's no denial, but data gathering on not only this, but other kinds of irrational, you know, drug use and everything is technically not easy. And you would be able to understand why.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
we also did a study in 3 country study, World Bank study, in which also we interviewed in 3 countries, 156 mothers, which clearly revealed that whenever formula has come up, it has come up from the, as Kushwaha said on that. Yeah, Nupur, move quickly because we have many questions and we
Yes.
are already out of time. Yeah.
Yes, so we are actually almost done with the questions because you have answered, and most of them are comments. And people are congratulating us, and they're also mentioning that they still see evident and blatant violations happening around them. So people have posted about them. And I would request if there are any journalists in the attendees, if they can raise hand and ask questions. I request if there are any journalists in the attendees, you can raise hand and ask questions, or we'll move to vote of thanks then. Nobody
Nupur,
has raised.
Nupur,
Yeah.
there are a couple
Yes.
of questions on
Okay.
like Dr. Khurana has asked about Johnson and Johnson and Abbott has several divisions.
All
Are
right. Okay.
you not reading this question? And then is it possible to dub tigers? So I'll answer two of them together here.
Tigers, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, is already
I
dubbed
think it's a
actually.
huge, Dr. Khurana, this is a huge task. It's a very good idea, but if ever funding permitted, maybe sometimes future we should do it. I agree with you. On Johnson and Johnson and Abbott having different divisions, that doesn't make them free from the IMS Act because they are by definition a manufacturer of, they might be manufacturing water or cream or any damn thing in the world, but if they manufacture feeding bottle or they manufacture baby food, they will be under the definition also. So there is another there is somebody from Geeta Shri from Assam. There are 2 units. Please report these. There is they are violating the IMS Act. So please do report this using the app or sending us an email. And the rest of the message is uh, last.
There's a question by anonymous attendee.
No,
An anonymous attendee.
I've done
Yeah.
that. I've done that, and that
Okay.
question
Can you
Avinash
just
Bansal. Avinash Bansal has also raised a issue that we missed Dr. Anvi Gupta's name. Yes, we did miss mentioning, and he's played a huge role in our founding. Uh, and we
I have already
apologize.
mentioned Arun.
You mentioned it. Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, I mentioned. Everyone said.
All right.
Arun, can you just let me reply this Salni
Please.
Sharma's question?
Please.
Salni Sharma.
Yes, please.
Okay, you see, Salni, you have written that breast engorgement may be a region where the mothers could not breastfeed. You have written breast is not producing milk. This could be region that mother cannot feed, or she cannot express milk. You see, in all these situations, we need a trained counselor to assess breastfeeding, to assess whether it is engorgement, to assess that whether the breast milk is there or not, and to assess the technique the mother is using to express breast milk. So a trained breastfeeding counselor is very important in all these situations. These all conditions, they are not reasons to go for other type of feed. It has been seen that all these situations one has to know how to talk to mothers, how to build their confidence, how to assess a breastfeed, how to observe breastfeeding, and then find out that what could be the reason. In a lot of situations, it is a full breast, milk is not being removed, and doctors diagnose that there is engorgement. We do not know the differences between full breast and engorgement. Baby may be getting enough of milk, and mother may be saying that my baby is not getting enough. So it may be false perception of the mother, and that's also is a reason that we need a trained person to assess breastfeeding. So I think that Dr. Bansal, there is no reason to give artificial feed to these situations unless we assess and help these mothers to breastfeed. Thank you.
Okay. So, if there are any questions which are unanswered, we will answer them over emails or to you. We have all your emails. Yes, sir. We have Dr. Sheila Dev with us. If you would like to.
Dr. Sheila Dev, do you want to speak? Any comments about it?
Yes. Yes. Good afternoon to every one of you. And thank you, Dr. Arun, for arranging this very important webinar. Am I audible? I don't know whether I am audible or not.
Yes,
Yes, yes. So, I'm sorry I could not join in time. I have joined very late, but definitely this kind of webinars are very much required at this point of time when the pandemic is actually raising and it's actually in a very high peak now. So, and there's breastfeeding of these newborns and the young children, young infants actually. It is being compromised as we are getting information at our ministry level that there are many the mothers are the babies are being separated from the mothers, and there are as a result there's promotion of feeding for infant feeding formulas that is actually being done in the health facilities. This is it's a very timely webinar that you have arranged, and thank you so much. So I would be happy if I can get the excerpt of these discussions. I have missed Ms. Vandana Prasad's, Dr. Vandana Prasad's presentation, and also I was just I could join when Dr. Aryan from UNICEF he was presenting. So I would be very happy if you can please share with us. And I am with you. I means we and the ministry, the Child Nutrition Division is there always to promote breastfeeding, and we will be there with you in future also. Thank you, Dr. Arun.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila Dev, for your kind appearance as well as giving encouraging comments. We will share the recording as well as the presentations.
Thank you.
With you.
Thank you.
And we will interact maybe later time. BP and I can interact with you to discuss how do we take this issue forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Nupur?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so we have for all the attendees, we have shared an email. If you have any query or any question, you can write to us, and we would be sharing the recording of the webinar with you all. And now I would request Dr. Arun to extend a word of thanks to all the resource persons and participant.
So it's a really a great pleasure. This is the first year of World Breastfeeding Protection Day celebration, 21st May, where every year it will be done. I'm happy that we are joined by Dr. Vandana Prasad, Dr. Kushwaha, and especially Aryan and Dr. Sheila Dev from India to join this celebration and commemoration of this World Breastfeeding Protection Day, which the World Health Assembly very proudly launched in 1981, International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes. I surely thank all the participants who have joined today, spending their time with us to continue to, pass on these simple messages about IMS Act. And in case you notice anything, please reach out to BP and I for any clarification, whether it's a violation or not, or directly write to the Ministry of Health in your state that it's a violation. Early and lastly, I'm very grateful to Amir, who has kindly agreed to speak to us and to the audience today and give his, full life story. So we are very glad. I have been hearing him since 1998 when I first met him. And since then, I've met him several times on some occasions where we have been jointly screening, particularly in a couple of countries in Malaysia and Brazil. We screened this movie. I urge all all the participants to go and subscribe at the Z5. It's not very expensive. Just take about 50 rupees a month, and you can 5 people can see in 1 month. You can share that with anybody. So more and more people will watch. More and more people will become aware how companies are handling us, how companies are misinforming us, how companies are actually ruining the lives of people. Not only just have to spend more money, but end up having their children sick in that sense and spending more money on their sickness. And some children do lose their lives also. So thank you very much, Amir, once again. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, BPNI team, for your wonderful background work. And to Nupur, Yashika, Veena, Amit, I think the kind of support you provide is excellent. And BPNI runs on your shoulders. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me this time. And thank you so much for everyone. And have a good day.
Bye.
So nice.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
have shared the link for resources. All the attendees can, check out that link. We have the presentations there and leaflets that we have prepared for this day, so you can go and check them.
Nupur.
Yeah.
Can you listen
Yes, sir.
And someone has asked about name of Dr. Gupta. So can you just send him the slide, one of the slide where I have mentioned the name of it?
Sure. Yes, it was there.
Okay,
yes. We have a message from Dr. Sheila Dev. Thanks to Dr. Gupta, BP, and I'm glad to see all the panelists and participants for joining in this important webinar.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Vandana.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice. Good
Thanks,
afternoon.
Arjun. Thanks, Amir.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.